Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Not a Sheep podcast. My name's Narwhal. I'm here with my buddy Matt.
What's up, guys?
And we're also joined by Abstract.
How's it going?
Yo, thanks for doing this. We really appreciate this. I think this will be really fun because I've been listening to you since I was probably a sophomore in high school now, and now I'm 22. So it's been a minute, and it's
wild.
cool to finally get to talk to you.
Hell yeah, definitely. I'm excited to be on.
Right off the bat, your album that recently came out on July 31st. How do I say the name of it? That's what I want to know. I don't want to pronounce it wrong.
It's Kintsugi.
Kintsugi. Okay.
Yeah.
And I always like to try and figure out right off the bat when I listen to a project. I like to know kind of just what the title of the project means. So I looked it up, and it says, I guess I wanted to give what I looked it up, like what the definition is, and then like have you kind of explain your reasoning,
like what
behind.
It means to you. Yeah.
So I looked it up, and it says kintsugi, also known as, I don't know how to pronounce that word, is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer, dusted, or mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. Directly translating to golden joinery as a philosophy, it treats breakage and repairs as part of the history of an object rather than something to conceal. How come you chose that as kind of the focus of the project and the title?
So originally, I thought the album was going to be something totally different. I had worked on it a little bit when I was living in Arizona for like 3 years. And right before I left, I had started the album. I even had some songs from it that were maybe like a year and a half old. So I actually went home to Wyoming, back in the house that my parents like moved a couple times in Wyoming, so it wasn't like the house that I grew up in out there, but it was some place that I had been working a couple jobs right before I moved to Seattle, and it was when it was still like everything was like a dream to me. I wasn't making money off my music or anything.
Yeah.
So I thought going back would be super like nostalgic, and like the album would be like, oh, returning home like after all this time and being like a full-time artist for 5 years up to that point, 4 or 5 years. And then just creating the album, I figured out that like there's a lot of stuff that happened in the years before that I still really hadn't gotten out. And so what I came into thinking it was going to be was totally different. So originally it was going to be named Cache Creek Drive, which is the road that house is on. And then halfway through, I basically like figured out that this is a whole different story, and where I'm taking it is very much examining like all the things that kind of broke me down over the years, and then how it grew me into who I am now, regardless of like the pain of that or any, pitfalls that I hit. It actually transformed my, I guess, outlook on everything and my art and my life to, fully form me into who I was supposed to be. So at the time, if some of these things were painful or terrible, I know I wouldn't be who I am or where I am without them. So it was like kind of that kintsugi of like putting yourself back together after being broken and like being shattered at times, and actually the beauty that comes of that. And also the big thing with kintsugi is something I've always done in my music is I'm very comfortable being like vulnerable and sharing my truth. So with kintsugi, you're actually highlighting the cracks. Like it's not just like, oh, let's try to hide this as much as possible to make it look like it was never broken. It's more like, no, like let's make that part pop, which is what I've always kind of done with my music. So that's why the big metaphor of it was so appealing to me. Sorry guys, I just lost my...
No, you're good.
my light. There we go. But yeah.
How often, when you go into a project, does that kind of happen a lot where you go in with a certain mindset and you kind of find out later the project is turning into something?
It's like a different story.
Yeah, and you didn't even maybe realize at the beginning, but it's now the story is telling itself, and it kind of leads you.
Yes, and that's what I like when I don't. And there's not times that I've gone through a project and not found this, but I find that if I go into an album specifically, like I have to come out the other side having found like some perspective or something that came from the journey of creating it for my own personal growth. And if I don't, then I probably wouldn't have pursued it in the first place. But it's something where like it's more like this I was talking to my friend Apollo the other day. It's like a very spiritual process of making a complete cohesive project, because you get lost in it. You literally, there's songs I've written where I'll just get to the end and I'm like, damn, that's actually how I feel about it. And I didn't even, this isn't even something that's come across my head, like my everyday, overthinking and whatnot. Like literally in the music, it was like staring you back in the face and going, this is what it is. And, for me, it's always been a very therapeutic thing, especially with albums, because I'm really trying to get to the bottom of whatever arc I just went through as a person. And tell it through the music and also find it through the music.
Is your creative process a lot different when you're working on an album versus maybe just a single or a short project or something?
I'd say yes. It's especially with my albums, my last 3 are all one cohesive kind of journey, I guess. So I like to stay within those bounds, but also explore like where I can take that. Especially with my 2018 album, Superhuman, kind of explain this whole universe and journey we're going on. And with Kintsugi, it was the first time that like, okay, we've like set up the platform, people understand, like the diehards understand what all of this builds upon, so I can do less. I don't have to do as much explaining about the process. I can actually treat it more like an album while having nods to this journey that we're going on. So especially now, a lot of times singles are things that, for me, I feel hit and they're really dope, but just don't really, they don't live in whatever I'm currently, the bigger picture of what I'm trying to do. Like songs like Vampire, I was like, I love this song, and this I feel it has the potential to be massive, but it sonically and sound wise, I don't have anything that sounds like that yet. So it's not like I was just gonna shove it on the album just because I was like, oh, it's a strong song. It just didn't feel like it lives on there. I do want to revisit that sound and create like a full EP at some point, but there's just some things where I'm like, I love this, it's really strong. It just, I don't see it sitting anywhere in the immediate future. So I'm just going to let it fly.
Yeah. Now, you said that your last 3 albums have all been tied together into this universe. At what point do you, as an artist, feel like you can wrap, like, does it feel concluded now with this project coming out? Does it feel like that universe is complete, or is there still more that is to be told in that same style and genre, I guess?
I think the one thing that's really cool about what we've built so far is it has the capacity to go anywhere. Especially like there's some things I teased in Kintsugi where I literally came up with the concept for the new album that I haven't even started yet. But there was a shift where I was like, oh, that's where we go next. But I like nodded to it in the Kintsugi album where it's not like, silver platter, this is what's going to happen. But I definitely nod to it because I love stuff like that. I'm a huge Marvel, Star Wars. I love a little bit of fan service. Like I love to bring in new people and be inviting and not try to shut people out. But for the people who do follow along and the diehards, it's like people will hear things and they'll go, oh, that's a nod to like 2 albums ago, or like even like his first EP or something like that. Like I love little things like that. So I think I'll keep going with this for maybe 2 or 3 more albums. Because there's a lot that I just like. The more I think about it and what we've done so far, the more crazy directions I can take it. So I think it's going to be definitely a long journey until that we get to close it out.
Yeah, that's dope. It's like the abstract cinematic universe.
Yeah, that's
what I'm trying to do.
I feel like for a lot of artists, that's a goal, to have some, not even just in music, but something that you can build upon and like
call back to
for years to come. And if someone
like
has
create characters, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I feel that way about, like podcasts and TV shows, and like anyone that you can follow for a long time and then look back and like they have like an inside joke or something and you realize that from like 5 seasons ago. I don't know. It's really cool. So you said that, well, I guess in Kintsugi, one of your lines, I don't know exactly how you worded it, but it's something along the lines of like, in 2019, your music was to like help you cope with a lot of things and like deal with, anxiety or whatever you were going through. How do you feel like if that was how you labeled 2019, how was 2020 and this album? Like, how did you change and how did your music change going from 2019? If that was the way you felt music was helping you then, what was 2020 for you?
I'd say it's still very therapeutic to me. Especially, I made most of Kintsugi in about 3 months. Like, I got to Wyoming, and I had maybe 20% of the album done. And then right when I moved back to Wyoming, because I didn't know where I wanted to live yet. I'd lived in Arizona for 3 years, Seattle before that. And I was just like, I don't know where I want to go next. So I was like, I'll go home. And that's right when the pandemic hit. So I don't know. I get a lot of inspiration off stepping back from experiences and places I've been. Like, there were even things from Arizona that, like, I didn't realize that because I was still in that same space, I didn't really get to unpack yet. Like, things that I thought I had worked through, or like things with myself I had worked through, like being in Wyoming and actually stepping back from all those experiences and the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. I was able to, I realized I had a lot more to unpack than I thought. And plus the pandemic, it was like, well, I can't really do anything. And, you know, especially even where I'm from in Wyoming, like, you go out and you drink at one of the 4 bars in town. So
Yeah,
it was something where I was just like, well, I have nothing else to do, so let me really, really hone in on this album. And yeah, I'd say music still is always therapeutic for me. I'm always learning and growing, as we all are, and I do that through my music in a big way. So I still feel that way. I think Kintsugi is also this story of, like, the universe teaching me a lesson twice because I needed it. There are things about myself and what I'm drawn to and what tends to get me in trouble that are in part, you know, my issue to begin with, because I actively seek those things. I tend to gloss over red flags, tend to see the good in people too much, and then I get screwed sometimes for it. So a lot of Kintsugi was like, all right, the universe is literally testing me twice because I didn't get it the first time. And that was a lot of the difference between 2019, 2020, is just really unpacking all of that and figuring out how I fit into the equation of my own success and also my own failures, I guess.
Yeah. That's so interesting how you said that it almost required like a change of scenery or a different location to kind of realize more about yourself. Because when you're in this certain spot, I feel like a lot of people probably get that way where you can't see what was wrong or what was going on until you kind of remove yourself from it and go somewhere else.
100%. It's like literally like staring at like a painting and you're like, you just see these brushstrokes and you're like, I don't know what this is. It just kind of looks like, you know, what it is right now. And until you actually step back from it, you're like, oh, like that's the painting. Like I was so close to it. I thought I understood it, but I understood a piece of it. But yeah, I believe in location and inspiration from different environments for sure. Yeah.
So you said that, I'm just curious, you said, so you're originally from Wyoming, and then when did you move to Seattle?
2014, the first time. Yeah.
Okay. And then how long were you in Seattle for? Because Matt and I, because we're in Seattle.
Okay, so, hell yeah.
And I've heard it in your music. Like I've heard you say like moving to Seattle or whatever, but I just didn't really know the context of it. So why did you move to Seattle originally?
So it was the first big city I moved to. So actually, I grew up a little bit in New Jersey, but mostly in Wyoming. So I was like 11 when I moved to Wyoming. So that's why I consider it home, because it was where I kind of figured out who I was. And, you know, instead of your parents just being like, you're going on a play date with this person, it's like actually you decide who your friends are and whatnot.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, Seattle was the first time I went. I was getting traction on YouTube and stuff like that, but I wasn't making money. I wasn't like really popping. 2014, I had a couple songs that were doing good. So I was just like, well, I had tried to go to regular college in Wyoming twice and hated it. I just hated it. I don't know why I went back a second time. It was just so dumb.
Yeah.
So eventually I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to school for audio production, like something where I can, you know, work on my craft, go to Seattle, you know, experience like the big city and their music hub and you know, make my parents proud by going and getting a degree and looking like I'm being productive. So I went to Art Institute for 2 semesters, and I met some of my favorite people ever because of it, and I love Seattle. I really fell in love with the city, but it just wasn't for me. It was one of those things where they do kind of hammer you into servicing the industry, and I was like, no, I want to be a part of it. Like, I want to be the guy making music. So I felt like part of my soul was kind of getting like nailed down, like just like put into place by it, even though it's not like they're not forcing it on you. But at the same time, I was like, I can't be in this mindset of like, this is how you service like when I'm trying to like be a part of it.
And you feel like they are basically forcing you to, even though they're not. It's like, what other option do you have, really? Like, you want to be a functioning member of society and like you want to have a direction, and if you don't know where else to go, like, I don't know, I think that's at least for me, that's incredibly relatable, not for music, but I've always wanted to be like an entertainer, but I'm also a videographer by like my day job, and there's been a lot of times where I'm like, I don't want to be the guy behind the camera, but I gotta like have a job, so I'm gonna keep doing it. But yeah, that's a super interesting place to be in, where, you know, you basically went to like trade school in a way, like music school. And so were you working like full time as like a I don't know, what was your job when you
so
finished?
I wasn't even in so I went for 2 semesters to the Art Institute, and basically I think I forget how many years it was for a bachelor's, but like it's basically this thing where they after you're done with school, you're basically guaranteed a job at a venue or something, mostly like in-house engineers and stuff like that. But I only lasted like 2 semesters. I was like, yeah. And then it's funny, a couple of years later, you guys probably heard about this, when I had a couple friends still going. One of my friends, Mike, had left already, but he heard about this. I guess they like shut their doors without telling anyone. Basically just all of a sudden. And Art Institute, if people go and they love it, it's great. I have some friends who have done really well in it. One of my friends works for Nike now. He went to the Portland one. But it is owned by Goldman Sachs at the end of the day. So it's money motivated. It's all my teachers were super talented, super cool, but they were just exhausted and they hated it. And you could tell, like in the way they approached their vernacular about the school itself and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
But it was, I met a lot of talented people I still like stay in touch with to this day. And Seattle itself was my first time, like, you know, flying the coop and going somewhere where I was like, damn, I'm a fish out of water kind of. And, you know, actually being part of some musical hub. Being from this small town in Wyoming, which was really eye-opening to see like how everyone operates and does it. And it definitely made a big impact on me and continues to. But yeah.
After those 2 semesters, when you realized that that you wanted to be the one making the music and you wanted to be your own, you know, person as a musician, what was your journey to go from that to, you know, where you are now? Because I think that a lot of people get trapped in that cycle of wanting to be their own artist.
Well, those are like the mystery years of like, how do you go from there to making a living?
Yeah, like that's where you're at right now. Yeah. That's where in a lot of ways, I'm still at that spot. And so I think a lot of people, like, that's the scariest part. That's the time when you either decide like you're going to double down or you're going to go try and do something else, you know?
Yeah. No, it's definitely, I'm very thankful for it at the same time, because I've been making music for 10 years. I've been full-time for almost 5. And I'm very appreciative of the time that things weren't clicking, because I think it turned me into a better artist, like literally having to just work for it. Like I put out probably 6 or 7 mixtapes on Dat Piff before anything really started to get traction. But it was definitely something that like is still humbling now, because I have seen people who get it overnight and they either blow it or they don't know how to be consistent and keep going, and they're just like, well, I had one hit, I don't know how to pull that out of my ass again. And it's like by me having to work as much as I did and put out as much as I did, it turned me into a better artist who can actually maintain what I do now and continue to climb. So I tell that to a lot of people is people want it like right now and stuff like that. But you got to think at the same time, your craft is exponentially increasing as you're forced to do it. And also there is something to be said about just being hungry. Like I still have that hunger, thankfully, because I always keep my ideas bigger than my pockets. So it keeps me motivated and interested.
Was there ever a time? Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, was there ever a time when you haven't felt that hunger where you, like, have you ever got to a point where you just didn't really feel like you didn't know what was next for you musically? Or have you just there's always been new ideas and always that inspiration?
There's always ideas and inspiration. I just find sometimes I'll have spurts where I will knock out like 5 fire songs and I'm like, damn, I'm good to go. And then I'll have like, 3 weeks where it's just like, I don't want to do anything. I literally am just drained. And I'm someone who I don't like to force things. There are times where I'll sit myself at the computer and be like, all right, you're going to write this freaking verse.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I do like it to be organic. And I tend to find that the best music comes from that. Even some of my best songs are the things that I wrote the fastest, like just because you're like right time, right space, right mindset, and it just writes itself. And that's not everything. So I've had really good songs that took me, 4 weeks, 3 months, whatever.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting. I used to beat myself up in those times where like I just had nothing, but now it's just like, all right, I just have to chill and like it'll come back, like it always has. But like when you're starting out, you always get afraid, like, oh, will I ever be able? But like once you've done it enough times, you're like, oh, like this is just, a downtime, and it's not the end of the world. It's just I have to respect that, not beat myself up, and just keep pushing, I guess.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is, so you said you moved to Seattle in 2014, and that's when your song "I'm Good" came out. I don't know what time of the year. Like, do you remember when you dropped that song? Because I'm just curious, because I'm trying to think back to 2014, and I'm almost positive that that's the song how I found you, and I think I found you through Swaggy Tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't know, it's just pretty crazy looking back, because like I was like a 10th grader or something in Seattle, and you were probably like in Seattle at the time trying to figure your shit out on your end, and I just found your song and was like bumping to it on the way to school. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of funny how things like that happen.
It is weird. Like that's another thing, like with music, that's really helped my perspective, is like the world is small. Like these little occurrences, even the fact that so many years later we're finally on a podcast like talking.
Yeah.
It is pretty wild how things kind of line up, and it's weird to think like where you were, where I was, very similar, but at the same time it's all part of, I guess, the ebb and flow of life. Like for whatever reason, like we're here today after all those years, and that connectivity of the music, it's pretty wild.
I wanted to ask, I heard on a couple songs you talk about, I think you said like I was 17 when I started writing. Is that like when you got into rap and you really started rapping?
Yeah, it was basically, I was like freestyling for fun at high school. Like we would go and I was from like, we grew up probably drinking much too early, but it was something where we would just like have some drinks and like just have some fun. Someone put a beat on, or and it just was a fun thing I was doing, and people would always be like, you should like write this down, like actually make songs. And I was like, I don't want like, I just do this for fun, like type thing. And then I went through, like, my parents were going through some stuff, and my first real heartbreak was at 17, and I was like, I just needed a way to like vent, and I was like, well, what if I actually start writing now? And that's when I started, and that's why even my roots in it are very therapeutic, because at the time it was just like, I need to get this out. And there's something very therapeutic about like getting something out onto a page and out of your head. It just feels like it doesn't live with you anymore. It's still, it's always a piece of you, but you kind of put it somewhere else, and it's very freeing.
Yeah. I always wonder when there's artists that, because there's got to be a lot of artists that don't write music from the same place that you did, of like coming from a place of like sadness or like needing.
You're going through something.
Yeah, like a lot of people create music because they're going through something, but there's also probably a lot of people that create music
because it's fun.
Just because it's fun, or maybe they're not even taking it seriously and it happens to go big. And I always wonder, like, that's got to be harder in a lot of ways for those people to kind of call back to their original inspiration, or like when all things are getting tough, can they even create music? Because for you, that's like the origin.
That's like a driving factor.
Yeah, that's a driving factor of your music. And so for someone who just does it as like a goofy thing, or they just don't view it in the same way, it must be hard to write for them, I would assume.
Yeah. I think, I think that's two-sided too, because I do know people who like they literally have to go through shit in order to keep making music. It's almost like, and I've probably done that subconsciously in some of my relationships, where it's just like, damn, this is chaotic and it's a lot of inspiration. And like my logical side is like, this is terrible. Like, what the hell are we doing? But then there is something in my subconscious where it's like, I operate well in chaotic situations. And I don't know if it's part of like in the way I was raised, where I feel like I am comfortable, not happy, but comfortable in chaotic and sometimes toxic situations. I don't know if that's something that's another thing that came from Kintsugi, and something I'm working on now is like, why am I attracted to some of these things? But even Machine Gun Kelly in his new album, he has that like, my label hates that I'm like this, I gotta go through shit to keep writing, like and I know a lot of artists who also operate like that. So I think it goes to both sides. Like sometimes I've luckily been learning and gotten better over the years at being like, you know what, like I don't need to put myself in this situation. I know that from an artistic standpoint and a self-discovery standpoint, like uncomfortability will give me growth, but I have to know what's healthy for me at the end of the day, regardless. That's why these days I feel a large percentage is still therapeutic, but some stuff is just like, I just want to rap, or I just have something to celebrate and I want to have fun. So, but I think what I'm trying to at the end of the day is like encompass the human experience, which is very multifaceted. And, there's days I'll wake up, write a sad song, and the next day I could wake up, write like straight flex track. It doesn't, but it's all, I just want to capture where I am all the time. People are always like, and this happens to all artists, people are like, why don't you go back to this or that? It's like, why would I go back to that? I did it already. It's there for you forever. But if I am not capturing where I am right now, I'm not being real with you, and you want me to be real with you because that's where that came from.
I like what you said about like you kind of are comfortable with chaos and you almost thrive in it. And I feel like a lot of people probably feel that if everything is going well in your life, if you're having like the best few months of your life, relationships are good, like work is good, school is good, for a lot of people, it's probably like, I don't have a reason to write or to make music. And that could get kind of dangerous if, like you said, even if you're not intentionally doing that, but in the back of your mind, because I've felt that way where it's like, it's like, what now? This is a shitty situation, but it would make for good content. It would, or in your sense, it would make for good music,
It's something people can learn from.
Yeah. But like you should never want that, but in a way it's kind of appealing,
Sometimes that subconscious kicks in of like, why am I, like, I did this, my past relationship, my most recent one was like, I had so many days where I was like, why am I doing this? But you hang on. It's like, I'm very much like a fixer, a little bit too much, where it's like, I am intrigued by people who have scars, as I have my own and stuff like that, but not always the best people. Just because I feel like I have found this light in life, and I turn into like, oh, let me share this light with you, and then you find out that it's just a dark pit of darkness that no one can do anything about. And it makes for great music, but also at the same time, as I grow older, I realize that like just for my own, I can't have a toxic relationship with my art. I can't be the thing that I live for and am most passionate about can't be chained to my insistence on chaos. And I have to choose, my own happiness as opposed to, and if I can't, it's like leaning on any drug or it's like I had that years ago where I couldn't write without smoking weed. I had a time where I was like, shit, it was like 2 o'clock, like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm trying to bust out a verse, and I'm like, oh, I can't. So I'd have to like call up and, but having your passion and what you love so much chained to anything outside of yourself is so toxic, whether that be through relationships or the situations you tend to put yourself in or substances or anything. If you can't operate without it in the thing that you say you love the most and are most passionate about, that's a problem.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point. And I've heard a lot about stand-up comedians in particular. A lot of them have like some substance abuse problems or whatever. And I've heard a lot about how a lot of them feel that, drugs or alcohol is what gives them their edge. And they're worried that if they get sober, they're not going to be funny anymore. They're not going to be able to write their sets as well anymore. And from what I've seen in comedy, at least, most of them can still figure it out and can still be just as funny. But it's like a difficult process for them to like realize that. And I would assume with music, it's the same way. Like, was it really hard for you to try and realize that, you don't need to smoke weed? Like, you can write sober and it can be just as good?
Yeah, it was definitely something where I was like, of course there's always a transition time. It probably took me about a month to be like, all right, I'm back to feeling like I am competent on my own. But yeah, it's hard to break free of anything, any vice, whether it be a person or especially when you're art. I have this problem with, I still have it to this day, and I've tried many times. I started smoking cigarettes right when I started making music. So there was always this synonymous thing between my creativity and production as a musician and nicotine, because they both happened at the same time in my life. So it's been something that I'm still working on and trying to. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, when this is over, like life will be way less stressful. I'll be good. And I can get rid of it. But then, life always is throwing you something to be like.
No, it's like a real concern for artists in the industry with like mental health, and I think there's a lot of awareness being like raised around it, but I still think it's one of those things where it's like people need to keep like pushing and talking about it, because there's so many guys that have been in the industry that struggle with that kind of stuff, but it doesn't reflect who they are as an artist, so they try to avoid it or cover it up, or even like we were talking about, their art comes from that place of depressed or feeling like anxiety, so it's a whole struggle.
Even Modson, who I'm actually, my homie, Art by Joseph, designed this hoodie, but Modson just went through like a crazy sobriety, because for years he talked about this, I think on No Jumper, where it definitely was that, like leaning on alcohol, thinking that your even like character that you're portraying in your music can't be upheld without, leaning on a vice, or, people won't think that, you're doing well if you're not like popping crazy bottles or whatever. Stuff like that. Like people start to lose themselves in the things that they think help create their image. And he's making some of the best music of his life now, being, off of it. And I think that's a really good show of like someone really making that transition for their own health, and realizing that, it always came from them to begin with. It's going to be there. And even like, I just think of this now because Cudi announced Moon on the Man 3. For so long, I'd see so many comments where people are like just mad at him being experimental and weird, and being like, you should start smoking weed again, all this stuff. It's like maybe he had a massive problem with it, and you're just hopping in his comments to like tell him how to change his lifestyle that he's working on himself for. I don't know. But people are gonna love what they're gonna love. But
a lot of listeners of music feel entitled to something because they've been listening to someone for a while. They're like, oh, I've been listening to you for 7 years, so like
they always want the old version.
Yeah,
of the
they want the
artist.
old version of you, and you're never gonna. I feel like very few people are happy with making the same type of music they made previously. Like, you are always gonna want to make something better.
100%. I'm even a weird one too, because I've luckily created a good amount of diehard people who understand me and get it. But I'm someone who, like, I'll drop, a boom bap record, and then, a couple months later drop a trap record. Then I'll drop some Jack Johnson shit. Like, I literally, I jump all over the place. And I know a bunch of artists who do really well because, no shade, but every song is pretty much in the same vein, and people know what to expect, and they know when they tune in that it's going to be very similar to the last one, and they liked that one, so they're going to like this one. I do enjoy challenging my listeners to be like, this is just what I felt like making. I hope if you like this and have never heard music like this before, you check out these artists who I'm inspired by. So it's a give and take, I think, to some people do very well off of just recreating the same formula and doing it time and time again, and I get that. But personally, it's not something that I got into it for or am interested in, I guess.
Yeah, I feel you. So when you decided you wanted to leave Seattle and you stopped going to music school, how come you ended up moving to Arizona? What was... I'm just trying to dissect your journey here.
Yeah, it was so I went to Art Institute, and then I left, and then I went back to Wyoming, worked like 2 jobs, and then I would make music at night for as long as I could. I was basically just getting money to move to Seattle again, but not go to school this time. This time it was just going to be work my job, mainly focus on music. And then the second time I went, that summer was when I was finally able to transition into like full-time music. Right after I dropped Something to Write Home About. I like quit my day job. I'd been working at like, it was a really nice old folks home in Bellevue. I forget the Bellatini. I don't know if you guys know it.
Yeah,
that's cool.
But yeah, I was like a server in their little restaurant. So I did that for a while. My homie Talon was the manager. He was also my roommate because when I moved out there, we just grabbed a place together. But we had met the first time I was in Seattle. So I did that, and then me and my ex moved to Arizona just basically to switch it up. Like, being in Seattle, you guys know it's... if it's not depressing. Summer, like it's super dreary and cold, and we basically just wanted like a 180. So Arizona was like just sun all the time, super hot. So it just kind of, I don't know. Also, the proximity to LA was really nice to me. Without having to pay like the LA prices, you could get, a super cheap flight from Arizona to LA whenever I was working out there, or videos or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So that just kind of made sense. But yeah, that was the main reason we did it.
So once you kind of took things full time and you were able to, make music your career, how did things change for you? Like, were you going to LA more and collabing with different artists, or were you still kind of just like sticking with were you sticking to the same formula, or did you try and like do things differently and like collab with different people and like work with different producers, or how did things change at all, or did you kind of stick with what was working?
I kind of stuck with what was working for the most part. I mean, I would go out there and occasionally and work with people, but a lot of my collabs were still coming from like the internet, friends I'd made online, stuff like that. My producer and my main vocal engineer, Craig, has always been over in Scotland or Switzerland, depending on where he was at the time. Wow. And we had worked for, 3 years before that. 3 or 4 years. Yeah, because we met when I was about 2 years in. I think when I was 19, he found me on YouTube. Just want to make sure I just keep going. But yeah, he found me on YouTube off of some terrible cover I did or something. But he was just like starting up, and I was too. So we just have continued to grow together like over the years. But yeah, I kept it very similar. The one thing that happened was I went on tour with Ryan Oakes and Dylan Reese.
Oh, yeah.
Who I had never really met before. We had just talked online. I think Ryan and I had made a song. Dylan and I had made a song. But we had never met in person. So we literally just jumped in this van and we're on the road for like 2.5 months, whatever.
Yeah.
But that
what
was super
that
cool.
Like meeting them and just touring with people that you didn't really know.
It was super cool because I actually just meeting so many people over the internet, like I've become very comfortable with like I was just throwing myself out there and being like, yeah, let's hang out. Like it's so funny because, you know, when you're growing up, your parents are like, oh, don't talk to strangers on the internet and stuff. And now like my entire life is based around talking to strangers on the internet. But the one thing that was really cool with that was Code Break, Cody. We became really good friends on tour, and he is Futuristic's DJ. And Futuristic is it just happened to be that they're all in Arizona. So I became friends with his whole crew. And so that was like the main big change was just being able to be around musically minded people when I wanted to. And as opposed to Seattle, where I'm friends with a lot of Seattle artists now, but at the time in Seattle, I wasn't, because I wasn't really anybody. Like, I'd meet people and they'd be like, oh, yeah, cool. But like, I probably talk to more Seattle artists now than I did when I lived there. But it's, it was definitely, it wasn't a huge change. I don't record in studios. I always have my own space. I've done a couple in LA, just like spur of the moment. We'll hop in, whoever's there, whatever we're doing. But for the most part, I do like to create in my own space. A lot of times it's even me just hitting the record and running to my booth. And that's just the way it's been since I was in the corner of my bedroom in Wyoming. So it's just a process I'm very comfortable with. Not to mention, I'd rather invest in all my stuff from the get-go and my own setup instead of paying hourly at studios and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
It just never made sense to me. So I like being self-sufficient.
Yeah, definitely. That's huge. It's so you've been working with the same producer that lives in where? Scotland?
Yeah, he's living in Switzerland now.
In Switzerland since you were 19, and you guys have just always worked remotely?
Yep.
That's pretty wild.
We before Corona, like we try to meet up like every 6 months, get the whole team out, because I have 2 guys from Norway, Drama Battalion, who did like I'm Good and stuff like that, and then Blue Lake, who did Neverland, so much production for me, but he's from Sweden, so the whole team was kind of overseas, so we were all always working remotely, and then Rose is in Detroit, so I was just used to that process. And yeah, that was like, even when we met up to do something to write home about in Sweden, we all hadn't met ever. Like Craig and I had worked for like 4 or 5 years and we had never met in person. So that was the first time we all actually, were working on something in the same place. Wow. And that was just wild. That was super cool.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Rose, you've collabed with him, a few different times, and he, like all the way back in 2014, he was on your song I'm Good, and even to this day, he was just on your newest album. So we wanted to ask you, like, who are some of, just your favorite artists to work with, and who's the dream collab? Who's the coolest artist you already have collabed with?
I'd say I love working with Rose. It's just hard to get him motivated. He's like a kind of an artistic like savant, where it's like we'll go months without anything, and then he'll be like, oh yeah, let's work, like I have an idea. But and that's great in some ways. Other regards, it's kind of like pulling teeth, but I love him still. Like we make great music when we do. I always love working with Craig, Blue Lake. we all have different relationships. Like I'll go to Blue Lake for different things. I'll go to Drumma for different things. I'll go to Craig for different things because I know what their strengths are and I know who can pull it off the best, which I really like. And then working with Johnny Coke, he's one of my best friends, and then also he's a Seattle guy. One of the first people I met out there, super, super talented. And then I guess Dylan Reese is one of my favorite people to work with because we really, we both think outside the box. Like we literally will just let a song go and like wherever it goes, and it becomes like we did a project called Ontology in 2019, and it sounds like nothing either of us have done really, but it was like, what does it sound like? Not just when we bring what we do to the table, but also like what does just us sound like? Like what is that? I love like with collaborative stuff. I love kind of bringing a new sound to life where it's not just like, oh, you rap, we'll rap the verses, and I've definitely done that and stuff like that, and you sing, you do the choruses, but it's more like sonically, what would that sound like on its own? So yeah, like he's one of my favorite people to collab with. I'd say dream collabs, I wouldn't even need to collab with him, but I'd just like to talk with him. It's John Bellion. I'm a huge fan, and he's just one of the greatest. I think
I saw him on tour in Seattle, and it just changed. It changed everything for me. It was crazy.
Dude, he's so good live. He's wild live. It's amazing. I saw him at the Crocodile, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Must have been 2015, maybe? Yeah, 2015.
Yeah. I saw him 2 years apart, and the amount of growth in terms of just the fan size, like the size of the venue, was insane. In just 2 years. Like, it's crazy how big he blew up.
Yeah. Yeah, because I saw him on at the Crocodile, and then I ended up seeing him in Arizona at like a freaking arena. I was like, this is wild, dude. Like, this is a whole different animal. But I guess dream collab would be Bon Iver, Kid Cudi, Billy Joel for nostalgic reasons.
Yeah.
And also, I think he could just murder a hook over some crazy production. I'd say... there's a lot of people I just want to meet and talk to, like one of those people being Childish Gambino is one of those people. Even Logic, just to talk to, because I still love what he's doing, but like when he started out, like the Young Sinatra tapes for me were very eye-opening to be like, damn, this is how I could do it. Like he's very blueprinty to me. Like I wouldn't be where I'm at without watching him and how he acted as a person and how he went about just his craft was very instrumental to me. So I guess just people like that. It's John Mayer too. I'd love to collab with John Mayer. I'd say those are my top.
Okay. I don't know if you listen to Mike Posner or if you're even
familiar.
Love Posner.
I love Posner,
Well, I wanted to bring that up because when I listened to the intro to your 2018 album, Superhuman, what's the intro song called? Takeoff. I got a lot of like Mike Posner vibes from that, and I don't know if that was like, I don't know if he was like, is or has been an inspiration to you, but I listen to him a lot, and when I listened to that, like, they'd set the stage for the whole project, and I was just like, it was a really cool, long, like, poem, I guess. What would you describe that intro as? Would you say it's a long poem or?
It's actually audio ripped from the short film that's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, so I basically wanted to make it so if someone found the album, like when I eventually have it on vinyl or something like that, like years on years down the road, they could still understand the context without having to watch the film. But it was something where I wanted to, especially if you watch the film, you can see how it ties into Something to Write Home About. And then kind of gives you this intro to this whole universe that we're kind of creating and the jump off point into the weird sci-fi aspect of it. But Posner I've always been a massive fan. Even like he does that in his albums where he wants you to, I think his newest one he did this, and also the one before that, where I forget what the name of that album was, but he tells you to listen to it at night. Because I think atmosphere is huge with music. Like there's different songs that'll hit differently if you're waking up in the morning or going to bed at night. Like it's all time and place. And I'm a huge he actually figured that out because he listened to one of my favorite albums, Paradise Valley by John Mayer, when he was in Utah. And he talks about it where like the album hit him totally differently in that setting, and like, you know, going through the rolling hills, and it just totally hit him in a more visceral level. And I'm a huge believer in that, of, you know, time and place is going to change your perception of the music. And I love, especially with Superhuman was this gamble to be like, I want to make people listen to albums again. Like I was literally like going to force people by doing these little skits and interconnectivity to be like, and I've heard from people who are like, why is it like this on this song? Why is it? And it's like, well, then you have to listen to the full album. Like I literally,
right.
I was trying to kill the single game, and people got it. Like it was something that, like, in the beginning, people were kind of like, "What is this?" But after digesting it, I have people who will come up to me and tell me like that's their favorite album ever. Like, and it was something where I kind of had to stick to my guns. Like I could have been spooked and been like, "Oh shit, people don't like." Like I could have gone and released a version of the album where it's just the songs or something like that. But I literally just, like, when there was a little bit of hesitation, I just dug my feet in and was like, this is what it is. And if you want to listen front to back, you'll understand it. If not, that's fine. Keep thinking the singles sound weird.
Yeah.
But it was something where I was like, we live in a because of the Spotify algorithm, release radar, all this stuff, we're kind of all forced to play the singles game. And I was like, well, let me kind of force people to enjoy a full picture, just in the actual execution of it. And it was also just challenging to me. It was something for me where I was like, I want to do this. It definitely took some Posner for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like I love that because like albums and mixtapes, I think they got to make their comeback in like 2021. But I'm sure you agree, as you're saying, like you got your start from like dropping mixtapes on Dat Piff.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with making albums, and I think that's even what I was talking about earlier. Like the fact that nothing happened overnight, like really allowed me to hone my craft for. So albums don't scare me because I was doing this before SoundCloud was a thing, before, you know, Spotify, YouTube was really. So I just came up comfortable with doing full projects. So I still enjoy making albums to this day. And that was my main thing. Yes, I play the game sometimes of the single game and, you know, leveraging the algorithm and whatnot. But Superhuman was really kind of an FU to that, if you will. Yeah.
It's really a shame, I think, that the algorithm favors so strongly singles. Because you would, I don't know, I feel like you would think that if somehow they could create if Spotify and Apple Music could create a system where it like rewards promoting like new full projects from artists, they would almost even get more streams, I would think.
Yeah.
If someone finds a new artist from one song, they would be a lot more likely to go listen to that whole project. But
I think our attention span is so short these days. Like people they're not willing to get more than 2 or 3 songs in on a project, and then they have their opinion.
Yeah, I know. It's tough. And like, speaking of Mike Posner, he says at the start of one of his projects, he literally says like, if you don't have the time to listen to it start to finish, please just don't listen to it at all and just come back later. And I think that, I don't know, that's really special, and I feel like a lot of that is getting lost because it's just not monetarily always the best decision.
Yes. The big thing I think is, well, even back in the day, it was like, of course, they put out records as singles and stuff like that, but at the same time, it was like, if you liked a song, you had to walk into, you know, the record shop, buy the whole album. And, you know, you're of course going to go, well, I just bought this whole thing. I didn't listen to the whole thing, of course.
Yeah.
So we live I'm even a victim of this. Like I know I have Abstract fans, and then I know I have Neverland fans, or I'm Good fans who never took the time to dive into who I was as an artist, but they love the song. And that's like, I really don't think that's existed any other time than now, to have, you know, people who they're fans of songs, but they don't take the time to actually look into the artist, where as an artist, I just don't even see through that point of view. If I find any song I like, I'll usually go and be like, what is this guy about? Like, I want to like look at the whole thing, but that's maybe me looking at it as a producer of content as opposed to how your everyday consumer of it may be. But it's definitely strange. I think I implore people, if you like artists, if you like certain songs, go into their discography, find out more about them, because I'm sure if they have a song you really like, they have more songs that you'll like.
Exactly.
And also it shows an appreciation for the work you originally liked anyway. It's kind of a respect thing to me that I do, and I wish more people did. But like you were saying, it's attention span, and there's so much stuff coming out. People find it hard to, sift through all of it. So of course Spotify is going to be like, oh, we'll just take a song, throw it on, see if they like it.
Yeah.
So I understand why it is the way it is, but I think there's ways to combat it. Just by mindset, even being like, a friend shows you like a great song, and you go, well, what else do they have? And they're like, I never even thought about that. Like, it's just like little things like that. Just a mindset to be like, let me, look into artists, not just songs, I guess.
Now so this album, your most recent album, came out on July 31st. What's next for you? Do you know, or did you kind of just take a little bit of time to let the album get received and just kind of chill for a little bit, or are you already working on new stuff?
I'm always working. It's there's one thing that we did with my friend, with Dylan Reese. We did this 2-pack, Top of the World and Lean on Me, that came out about a month after my album. Produced by Cook Classics, and that actually got on ESPN Monday Night Football, which was super cool.
Yeah, I saw about that. I saw
That's so sick.
I mean, I saw you post a little bit, but I also saw like Justin Stone was like, "Yo, my boy Abstract." Like, that was so sick.
Super
like,
cool.
how did that happen, or what was that like?
So that's mainly by the muscle of Out of Sight, who's our friend. He runs a label called 83 Sound. And he's found like a really big lane in doing sync placement. Like he was in the newest, he was in the Spider-Verse trailer.
Wow, yeah.
He just did a big thing for Google. He's just literally carved out this lane in the music industry of like sync licensing, which a lot of people don't even think about, that you can make money that way. So those were the first 2 attempts at us really making music for sync licensing, whether it be movie trailers, ESPN. So he literally has been pitching those to, however many companies, and you get placements, and it's an interesting avenue, because I've always been very interested in film and TV shows and video games, getting my music and that type of stuff. So yeah, it's fun. It's a different approach, I guess, to the songwriting than we normally take, because we're trying to provide an energy and a backdrop for it, as opposed to being like the top line story. So even stuff like Top of the World is more energy based. It's like, yes, I have some bars in there, but at the same point, it's just really to background and be the background of the moment, as opposed to being the moment itself, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
So you're kind of going into it knowing that like you're not really even supposed to kind of be the focus in a way, like, or you're going in with a certain intention.
You're setting the tone. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Just that's interesting.
It was a different process, but I really enjoyed it. It's something I want to explore a lot and see what I can do with it, and But I guess I didn't even answer that question there.
Oh, no, you're good.
It's I'm doing a bunch of stuff. I'm kind of just jumping from different projects. So I think what I'm gonna do next year is do like 4 EPs that have a connective cover art, where if you put them together, it's one picture type thing. Like 4 different styles. Each one is a different style, and just kind of really drill in the versatility thing. Because I've also found it keeps me going if I'm on my toes, and I'm like constantly able to be like, well, I'm like hitting a wall with this, let me go jump into this other genre. And keeps me kind of on my toes and excited about what I'm doing, with the ability to juggle all these different approaches, I guess.
Yeah,
that's cool. I've heard Gary Vee talk about like he likes to have like as many different projects going on at one time, because then the creativity, like you said, when you jump from, if it starts to run dry with one, you can go to another and then almost get filled back up and go back to it.
Exactly. Yeah, and it keeps you going at the same time. It's not like you're stepping away from it. You're like still keeping your, creative machinery going, but it just allows you like the breath to be like, all right, let me step away from this, jump into something else.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we're definitely excited for whatever's next.
I'm excited.
Do you have anything upcoming that's like official yet? Any dates that's anything else is going to come out, or are you still just kind of working on stuff?
Just kind of working on stuff. There's one that we're doing right now, and the big thing is like figuring out how to master and mix differently because it's a different genre that we really haven't jumped into before. So a lot of it is trying to find out what that sounds like and then apply it to the rest of what we create there.
Right.
The big thing is my merch, like Moon 5-2. I've got sneakers on the way. We have jeans on the way. I have these little guys who are little like collectibles that are coming out soon.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm excited.
that.
I'm just trying to expand on the whole, I guess it's part of my abstract merch, but also just lives in its own world. So
Yeah.
that's
And
another
you do
thing.
all
Like it's
of
a
that-
fun.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, and you manage all like your own merch and all that stuff, just all on your own.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
But
that's another thing.
Gotta be a lot.
It is a lot, but what you were talking about too is that productivity thing is like it's another thing that I can, if I'm just so over music, I can literally hop out and be like, I'm gonna go design some stuff or like talk
That's
to a
dope.
factory or like see what this sample would cost. It's a way for me to keep being creative, but step away from whatever I'm, slamming my head against the wall about.
Yeah, that's super important to like have something to fill you up outside of music.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys probably at least for me, if I commit my life, like a lot of my time is spent editing videos and like filming things, and I realized the other day I need a different hobby. I just need like something to spend time in outside of this like work, because it's like my whole life, and if I don't have something else, I'm gonna go literally insane.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel with your music, or just music in general, do you just ever feel like you need to like get away from it, like you're too close to it and you need something else to kind of remove yourself from it, or do you feel like music is just encompasses your whole life?
Definitely. I think I suffered with it a lot more when I was probably 2018. I think during Superhuman, I was just obsessed with my work. Like I literally could not step away from it. Also, my studio's in my house, so it was like I would think of something at like 3 a.m. and be like, I need to do this right now. And it was just something I really struggled with separating my life from my work. And that's one thing that I think people don't realize when you're an entrepreneur in any, self-sufficient way. We don't get to clock out. It's not like, you're at your work till 5 and you get to clock out and say, all right, I'm not that person the rest of the day. Like as a musician or an artist or any creator, there is no clock out. Like it's a 24/7. So you actually have to structure yourself to be like, I'm not going to worry about this the rest of the day. I'm just going to step away from it. And I forget who was talking about it. Someone was in the studio with Eminem, and
I've heard about this. Yeah, this is dope.
yeah, what he was like, they recorded till like 6 or something, and the other guy was like getting ready to record and was like, and then Eminem was like, yeah, I'm out of here. Like it just hit like, I forget if it was 6 or 5, whatever it was. It was just at a certain time. Like Eminem literally has structured his
Just like
life
clocks
enough.
out.
Yeah, he's like, I clock out too. Like that's it. Like, but I think early artists, it takes a long time for you to get to that. I've really struggled with it. I've gotten way better over the last couple of years, but to disconnect and just say I'm done for the day and not obsess over what you were just trying to get done, And I hear from a lot of people that are like, oh, I have to grind all the time. I can't sleep. I got to be up grinding. And like, that's no way to operate. Like if you're not, being healthy and eating and sleeping and stuff like that, you're not going to come out with your best content. I promise you, your body's running on fumes. There's no reason why. So like when people like Eminem do that, I totally get it. It's like, it takes a long time to get there, but he's been doing it for so long, he has that self-structuring down. But it's just, I think that's a big thing that, it's not healthy. You may think, oh, I got to grind this hard. I have to put in this many hours. But it's like, what is the quality of those hours if you're running yourself into the ground?
No, that's huge. I feel like, I don't know, to me it seemed like a few years ago there was this mentality of like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like everyone's there was this whole grind mentality for 4 or 5 years. And I think people are now realizing like you can grind, but you can also take care of yourself, and you should try and do both.
Yeah.
Yes.
And at least for me, that was the case. And now it's like, and you just feel better if you take care of yourself when it is time to then do your art or your work, whatever you're trying to do. It comes out way better because you don't feel like you're dying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know.
But it's just I have a lot of people who hit me up and they're like, oh, I've been staring at my computer, I've got nothing. And it's like, dude, go out and live life and get inspired. Like staring at the same freaking thing is not gonna make you miraculously be inspired. This is not how it works. So you got to take it seriously, but at the same time know, what is healthy and what is not for you at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been super. I don't know. It's just really inspiring to me to get to talk to other artists, especially people that are kind of have navigated the industry and made it into something that's working for them. And it's just been cool to get to talk to you, especially since I've been listening to you for so long. So thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you for having me. And I'm down to talk anytime. I love getting into this stuff, and hopefully people watching can take something away that helps them propel themselves forward, or take a look at the way they're doing their work, and hopefully inspires.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Well, with that being said, we're going to wrap it up here, but where can the people, if they want to just kind of find more about your journey, follow you on social media, or find you on, the music platforms, where can they follow you?
Instagram, you can find me, Abstract307. I should consolidate all my stuff, but I haven't. YouTube is Abstract the Rapper. Spotify, you just look up Abstract. That's me. And what else? Facebook, Abstract. Yeah, I'm all over the place. But yeah.
Sweet. Matt, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at @TheMattMog, and you can also check out my music under just Matt Mogg, MattMoggg.
Yep. You guys can follow me at Hey Narwhal on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can also check out our other show called Peak to Middle School that's filmed in the same studio, but with me and my buddy Kyle. And there's new episodes of this show every single Monday. So if you guys have any recommendations for artists that you listen to that maybe you don't think is like gets enough recognition, or someone you just want to see an interview with, definitely let us know. But yeah, thanks again, Abstract. We appreciate it. And
much love, guys.
And hopefully we can talk to you again soon when your next project comes out or something.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, guys.
All right,
appreciate it, bro.